Hey guys, and good afternoon. This is the first ever Jake Graham podcast, OTown series. Guys, if you don't know me, I'd like to take this moment to introduce myself, for this is the first podcast. My name is Jake Graham. Currently, I am the husband of a fantastic dog groomer in town, and on the weekends, they even let me play on the local radio stations. So, if you haven't heard me yet, or you haven't heard my voice, surprise, this is me. Now, for a while, I've always wanted to do a podcast, but the hard thing was to find a topic that I wanted to do a podcast about. So I did some digging. What is something that's not very controversial, that most people would be interested in, and that could be for everybody? Finding something that is not controversial in the 2024 era is certainly a hard task to do. So that's when I started looking a little closer to home. I figured, OTown has a lot of history. I bet there's a lot of things we can talk about, bring attention to people that have lived here their whole entire lives and never knew some of the stories that we're going to be sharing. Guys, I'm excited to tell you that I'm finally going to get it started. This is going to be the first OTown podcast. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm quite set on the name OTown Podcast. Sounds kind of cool. I could call it the Owatonna Town Podcast, but no, I don't like it. Your feedback is going to be very important through this whole process. If you guys can maybe provide me with names, guests, if you have a story yourself you would like to share, it's something we could certainly do. We could get that set up real easy. I'll have you come in. We'll do a sit-down interview. Probably about 20, 30 minutes. Not looking at doing a real long podcast. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are very long, and unfortunately, you find yourself getting about halfway through, and then you're kind of tired of it. That's not the goal here. Maybe there will be some podcasts that are a little bit longer. And if they are, that's great. But the main focus here is going to be just to provide a fun, interesting, factual story that we can present with the community, and maybe something that we can all just talk about, discuss. Maybe we learned it different. Maybe we didn't quite understand it, but we're always curious about it. I guess, really, the main goal is just to have fun. The podcast is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to try to get it up on several platforms. Obviously, I'm not going to charge. This is something certainly free. I'm doing this because it's fun. It's kind of a hobby. And honestly, what else do I got better to do with my time but than to hang out with you guys? Most guys are on Facebook. You're probably going to watch this probably going to watch this podcast or listen to this podcast on Facebook as soon as I learn how to put it up there. I'm going to also load it to YouTube and maybe some other podcast sites. Not quite sure. This is all very new to me. The one thing that I might be able to master is way overrated of a word. The one thing I may be able to do right off the bat is actually communicate. And I'm even finding that just a little bit hard to do, because not only do I got to keep talking, I got to look at the clock. Now, normally it's really easy for me to keep talking, and that's not going to be a problem. But when I got the clock telling me how much time I got or how many more minutes I have to talk, it's a little challenging. But regardless, guys, I'm going to need your help for this podcast. What I'm going to need from you is ideas, suggestions, things you guys want to talk about, things you want to learn. I appreciate all questions. I'd like to say, let's try to keep it professional. Hopefully we got some young minds listening to this. Now, with that said, I think it's important that I kind of reiterate the fact that it's going to be an age-appropriate show. There's going to be jokes, but it's not going to be crude. It's going to be funny, friendly. We're going to stay away from the politics. Let's be honest. There are a lot of podcasts out there right now that are absolutely nothing but politics. We're going to try to stay away from that. With this podcast, that's the goal. I know that politics are a very important part of history, but I think as long as we're keeping it to the relative story of ancient history and not the political climate that's going on today, I think we're going to be A-okay, guys, right there. And I'm anxious to learn. I didn't go to school here, so a lot of the stuff that I'll be learning about that some of you may already know and you were taught that in school, this is all going to be new to me. But unlike when I was in school, this is actually fascinating stuff to me now. I love history. I think it's very interesting. If you ask me, some of the best movies out there are the ones that are based off true stories. And that's what we're going to do. We are going to provide true stories, at least to the best of our ability. See, that's the thing about history, especially when we go really far back. There's no one around from that time to tell us the story, tell us firsthand accounts of what actually happened. So a lot of times we're dealing with knowledge that was passed down over and over the years, which is also very important because without passing down that knowledge and those stories, they die. There's no other nice way to say it. That is what happens. And I think it's a shame, it's a crime when history dies. So, with that said, guys, I'm really hoping this podcast can take off. It's not going to go anywhere without your support. So, guys, if you guys got topics you want to talk about, like I said earlier, please leave a comment below. I want to know what you want to know. I want to hear what you want to hear. So go ahead, leave me a message. Try to get this out here real quick. Get back to you as well. And hopefully you guys are listening to this. This is the first ever Jake Graham podcast. It's not very long. Like I said, this is mostly just a test. I want to make sure I can get it right, get it uploaded, get it to you guys so you guys can listen to it. A lot of you guys did express interest on Facebook about doing a podcast about Owatonna and Steele County history, and that is the goal today. And if you guys have suggestions about how I can make this better, please feel free. If you say, Jake, you talk too much, you spend too much gabbing about stuff that doesn't matter, we need you to stay focused. Go ahead, guys, send me that criticism. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to listen. I am bullheaded, but, I know where it's coming from. It's all good stuff. My goal is just to get better at providing you guys with a podcast that you all want to listen to. All right, guys, that is actually going to be it for today. It's only 7 minutes long. Like I said, relatively short podcast, but mostly just a sample run. All right, guys, this is Jake Graham signing out. Hope you guys have a good night. You've been listening to the OTown podcast.